Hi, welcome all. In this video, we'll see TestNG part 4. As part of this video, we are going to see data provider attribute, data provider annotation, data provider in same class, data provider from another class. We'll see all these things. First, what is data provider? Data provider means, so just an example, if you want to achieve data driven testing, let's assume we have this application, right? This application. So for this application, I want to register 10 people one by one. Okay, I'll register some people one by one. So let's assume if I want to register 10 people, I'll write a test case like I'll find the text box and dot send keys, and then everything we have seen that, right? How to handle text boxes, ready buttons, all this. I have written a script. If I want to do the test case with 10 different sets of data, then two options. You need to write 10 test cases, right? 10 test methods with the different sets of data which you want. Otherwise, for single test case, after completion of one test case, you need to change the data, again you execute and change the data, and again execute and change, execute, change, execute for the like that 10 times. So is this a real-time experience or no? Example, is that possible in real time, going there and changing and executing? Right, it's not possible. So that time I want to execute that particular test case with different sets of data, and that is very easily instead of manual intervention. Like I can see writing 10 test cases is a bad practice for each and every user registration. If I write 10 test cases, tomorrow I want to do 100 registrations. Should I write 100 test cases? It's very bad, right? That is, it's not a real-time scenario. It's not practically very bad practice. And then I cannot keep updating the data 100 times. Execute, update, execute, update, execute, update. I cannot do that 100 times. So how you can achieve that? So to achieve this kind of data-driven testing, we have one of the provision in TestNG, that data provider. So we'll go here. We'll go step by step. I'll take one class, new class, data provider demo, I can say. Data provider demo. So here, what I first I'll write one test method. Let's assume public void, I'll say login method, string username, and then string password. I need to supply two parameters, that is username and password. I'm just printing this. Instead of login, I'm not writing the Selenium code here. I'm just printing. You can write Selenium code. So password. Okay, but I want to execute this method with different sets of username and password. Okay, different sets of username and password. I want to execute the same method again and again. How you do that? I have 4 sets of data, just as otherwise 2 sets of data. How you can do that? The same way what we discussed now, I cannot keep updating the test data, otherwise I cannot write more than one test case. So that time you have one of the annotations that is called data provider @data provider. You see that data provider is from TestNG annotations.data provider. So now the return type of, you need to write a method here. You need to write a method. It's a public void provide credentials, something like that. You can give whatever name you want, but a return type of this data provider should be object class, double dimensional object, like this. Only object can't be string, so you can give whatever it is. Ideally we'll take object. The reason is object is super class of all the classes, so it can hold any kind of data. If you give string, if you give int, if you give boolean, whatever the data you can hold. So when I execute something, what the data will come from the external sources or what the data which we are going to give, we don't know. So that is the reason if you give object, it can hold any kind of data. So normally people will always say the return type of data provider is object. Somebody will ask in interview that what is the, if somebody asks what is the return type of data provider, if you say object, they'll say is another class is not possible. So people will say blindly no possible, it is only object, but it is possible. But the reason why we will take object is it can hold any kind of data. So that is the reason we will take super class. Okay, the syntax how you write is that, right? Return new object, inside it will hold multiple sets of data. Okay, inside this I'll mention, you can give how much information you want. So valid username, comma, valid password, comma, this is one set of data, right? We just discussed 100 times means 100 sets of data. One set of data, one username, one password. In the same way, valid username, comma, invalid password, and comma, again same thing, invalid username, comma, valid password, and then comma, and again invalid username, comma, invalid password. Something like just an example. So now I am done. I am sending four sets of data. 4 sets of data I am sending. You can send 100, 200, 300 according to your requirement. Okay. Then it will return object. Data provider is a method. The return type is normally object, and it is returning one object, two-dimensional array object, and inside this we have some sets of data. Now how this data will provided to this test method, how it will pass this information to this. So for that you have one of the attributes to your test annotation. We have priority, dependency on methods, description, all these things. Like the same way you have data provider. You see that data provider is equals to, you need to give this data provider method name here. Okay, that's it. When you run this one, it will check for this data provider with this name. Then if you found this, it will pick the data, it will pass here. Internally TestNG will take care. That simple it is. Fine. And there is one more information you need to remember, or before that first we'll execute this, whether it is picking the data and printing. You see that it is printing the data, valid username, valid password. So we'll do one thing. Instead of showing like this, plus I'll print in same line, and I'll give some space here, and here also I'll give some. Okay, I'll remove this. In single line I'm printing both the values. Run as TestNG test. You see that valid username, valid password, valid username, invalid password, invalid username, valid password, invalid username, invalid password, and it is saying that say login method with this credentials one time executed, login method with this parameters again executed, login with these parameters again executed, login with this again executed. Actually I have written only one test, right? But when you see the output, a test runs 4 times, and if you go here you see that 4 tests, 4 times login test executed with different sets of data. You see, this is how you can execute same method again and again. Okay, this is the benefit of data provider. Now what I'll do, I'll give some string dummy, just an example, and I want to print here this out dummy. Okay, I am passing 3 parameters. Now if I run this, you see that it failed. Okay, there is no third data, that is the reason it is failing. So I'll give some dummy. That's not the possible, right? I need to pass from here. Okay, when you see the example, output, we'll see what is the issue. You see that data provider mismatch, data provider mismatch, method matcher exception, method matcher exception is coming. So login parameter index 0, index 1, and then index 2, but it is accepting only valid username, valid password first time. The third parameter is not there, that is the reason it failed. My intention here is how many methods here you are providing as a parameters, that much data you need to pass. Here only 2 values, here is expecting 3 values, then method mismatcher will get. So this count should be same as this parameter count, otherwise it will give you exception. Okay, that you need to remember. Okay, that is, and once again provide credentials you have given. So apart from this, you can do one more thing. What is that? You can give, for the data provider, you can give a name. Name is equal to simply credentials. Okay, credentials. So you can give this method name, otherwise you can give this name also here. Okay, if you want some valid name, instead of method, if you want to provide some name to that, some valid name, and then if you want to provide that. Otherwise, sometimes so many credentials are there. I'll say login credentials, something like that. Okay, now if you run this, same thing, is executing. You can give this method name, otherwise the method's data provider name also you can pass. Both the ways you can do the same thing. Okay, now if I say string, okay, I am not getting any error. The reason is string is subset of object. Here also I can give string. Okay, now if I execute this, it will work perfectly. The reason is I know I am passing the string. Suppose if I am passing here, just assume it is int password. So instead of this one, I say 1. I need to pass something like that, right? One string, 1, 6, something like that. But this time I am getting error. The reason is it is string type. I am providing one string, one integer. So type mismatch, cannot convert from int to string, right? So if I change this to object, you see that error gone. The reason is object can hold any kind of data. Now if I execute now, it will execute perfectly. You see that username 1, valid username 1, valid username 1, invalid username 2, invalid username 6. Everything is working fine. But previously if I mentioned string, otherwise if I mention integer, then it should accept only integers. That is it. I don't know what kind of data I'll provide. I'll provide multiple sets of data. One is string, one is int, one is boolean, something like that according to my requirement. So when I say particular class type, string, integer, something like that, then you will get an error you cannot handle perfectly. That is the reason if you use object is a superclass of everything, then you can send what kind of data you want to provide, you can provide. Okay, I'll back to the normal just to show the example. So I'll say login credentials and provide login credentials. That simple it is. So the single, if I copy paste 100 times, it will execute 100 times. Right. Now this is data provider and data provider, here data provider annotation, data provider attribute for this, and we have seen that data provider in same class. So in the test method and data provider annotation, test annotation, data provider annotation, both are in the same class. So data provider from another class. Okay, fine. See, normally when you take login, you will have only test methods. When you go to the registration, something like that, then all registration related test methods will be there, only test methods. Then I am using data provider. It's not a, see, you can write something like that, but my intention is I want to segregate some test in as a separate class. So inside that, if you write data provider, it not looks good, but you can write, see, it is working perfectly fine. But tomorrow you have a number of methods, right? Managing will be very tough. So it's not a best practice. Only test methods will be in the class. This is helping to this one. So you can separate it from this class, you can put in another class, from there you can access. Right? When you create a framework, when you build a framework, that is a best practice. You can arrange in a proper way. And tomorrow the maintenance will be very easy. Right? So now what I'll do, it's a login. I'll write one more test public void register. Okay, for this register I need string username comma string password comma string confirm password. Let's assume it need this much information. Normally some registration you will get so much of data, first name, last name, address, your hobbies, so many things, but just an example I am taking this one. Confirm password. So for this I cannot give the same data provider. Okay, when I run this you will get mismatch. You see that one passed, the next one is, say for login test it is fine, but coming to the register the method matcher exception. So now what I need to do, I need to create another data provider. Right, I need to provide another data provider, provide some register data, something like that. So I'll name it as register data, something like that. So I can provide this to here, here, and I need to give one more value, right? Confirm password. I'm just giving a dummy data I'll copy paste the same thing. This is dummy data. So when I run this now, working fine, right? Login 4 times and register 4 times. It's different sets of data. Here it needs 3 parameters. I am passing 3 parameters. So 2 test methods are there. Here 2 data providers are there. Let's assume yours is a very big application in a single class for multiple test methods. You need to pass multiple sets of data, something like this. Then if you keep writing something like this, test methods and data providers in a single class, tomorrow if you want to change something, if you want to do some maintenance, it becomes very tedious job. So you need to segregate these. Both test methods will be in some class, data providers will be in another class. Then it is very easy to handle the test data. Okay, that time how you can do? We have a provision for that. So you create one more class. What I can do that? I'll create one more class. New class. Data. Again say data supplier, something like that. It just supplies the data. Okay, data supplier. In the data supplier, I will put all my data providers. I have 100 test cases. In 100 test cases, at least 10 to 15 test cases are expecting some data providers. So the 10 data providers I will manage here only in the data supplier class. Then if you want to change tomorrow something, then I can come to directly data supplier and I can change here easily. Otherwise, where it is in which test case, in which position it is there, I need to search. So that can be very easy using this way. Okay, so we'll do one thing. Data provider demo, right? I'll do one thing. I'll rename this data provider from same class. Okay, from same class. Now I'll make a copy of this. Control C, Control V, or Command C or Control V. I'll say from another class. I'll take the same example from another class. Here I'll not put my data providers in here. Control X. Okay, I'll move this data providers to my data supplier. That's it. Very simple. I segregated both into different classes. Right. I don't need this one also. So here only my test methods. Here only my suppliers, data providers. Okay. Now, if I try to execute this, you see that failed. TestNG exception, TestNG exception, some TestNG exception. Data provider from same class requires a data provider named login credentials. So this required one login credentials data provider, and the same way it requires registered data, but it is missing. Why? Previously it is executing fine, right? In the data provider from same class. So sorry, I need to remove here. Control X, same class, I place it. So when I'm writing from the same class, it is executing fine. Alright, when I run this, it's working fine. You see? But when it comes to the here, when I run this, I'm getting error. Why? Data provider is there, right? Data providers are there in the data supplier class, right? Even though why it is failing, the reason is when you execute any test, something like that, if it is expecting some data provider, it will search in the same class. If it is available in the same class, it will pick that, it will execute. But in the same class, I do not have data provider now. So that is the reason it is failing. But this is in another class. So you need to make sure that data provider is in another class, use from there. You need to mention that. Then it will go to that class and it will search and it will pick the data from there. That is the only difference between the same class and different class. So you need to provide one more attribute here. What is that? Put a comma after data provider. You have one more data provider class. What is the data provider class? Is equals to data supplier, and you need to mention dot class. From this class you are getting the data. In the same way you mention here also, data provider class is equals to, data supplier dot class. Right, this is the extra attribute you need to provide to your test annotation. Now it will go to this class and search for this data provider, and it will go to this class and it will search for this data provider. If it is there, it will pick and execute. If there is mismatch with the parameters, if there is no data provider, you will get obviously what you are expecting, the errors, right? That is obvious. But if I execute now it will execute perfectly. You see, right? It is executing. The reason is now I provided where the data is. So from there it will pick the data. Very simple. At the test method, which is the data provider and which is the data provider class, if you mention, it will pick the data from there, it will execute. Your code looks very clean. That only you will have in this inside the class only at the test methods only, not the data providers. Then you arranged your data in such a way that tomorrow if you want to revisit and if you want to change anything, if you want to update anything, it is very easy. So if you want to change something for login data, so you simply go to data supplier class and go to that particular method and you will change. Right, that simple it is. This is all about data provider for same class and data provider from another class. And if you write any data provider, when you execute, first it will search inside the class. If it is available in the class, it will execute from there. Okay, I never tried. I'll give a try once again. What is that? I take data provider, I'll put in the same class, but I'll change the data. The reason is, if the same thing is 2 times, which one it will pick? I never tried, but I'm giving it a try. So directly it will go inside this, or first it will check inside the class. If it is available, it will pick. I don't know, I never tried. We'll give it a try. You see that? It is not even, it is considering this one. The reason is, we already mentioned, go to this class and then find this. Okay, that is the reason. No problem. Okay, if you do not mention anything, it will search in the same class. If it is another class, you need to mention which class it is coming. That's it. Okay, this is all about data provider and data provider from the same class and data provider from the another class. I want to discuss one more thing here. That is data provider with multiple parameters, means multiple values. So we'll take an example and we'll see. New class data provider with multiple values. Finish. Here what I'll do, @test public void the same login string username comma string password, and I'll print the same thing. I'll take it from here and I'll import this. Okay, now here the same thing, but instead of giving like this, you can use one more way. I'll show you that way. Public the object as a simply data. You can create an object for this, info, something like that. New object here. And here return info. That's fine. But here I'm getting an issue that you need to mention variable must provide either dimension expression or an array initializer. You need to give how many rows and how many columns. So here I'll give 4 rows, 2 columns. Okay, 4 rows, 2 columns. Rows and columns. Rows means how many sets of data. Column means number of parameters. Okay, now rows and column. Two columns means 2 parameters. 2 parameters. 4 rows means 4 sets of data I need to provide. Okay. Here how you can give? So info, you need to mention like this, valid username. But I need to mention in which location it is. 0, 0. And the same way, you need to mention 4 sets of data, right? Yes, 4 sets of data. Here 0, 0, 0, 1. Then 1, 0, 1, 1. Here 2, 0, 2, 1. Right. 3, 0, 3, 1. Right. See, this is row, this is column. I have 2 columns only, 0 column, first column. The column means index starts from the 0. This 2 means first 0th one, first one. But coming to this 4, 0th position, first position, second position, third position, 4 times. In the 0, 0, I have this one. Valid username, also valid password. Here invalid username. Here invalid password. Here invalid username, invalid password. The same thing I converted to this way. This is another way of giving the object. Same way you mention this one, @data provider, and the name is equals to, otherwise I don't need any name. I can directly give the method name also, right? Just as an example. Okay, so here I'll just mention data provider is equals to data. Okay, data provider is equals to data. Now if I try to execute this, what happened? Array index out of bounds exception. Can somebody tells that here it should be 2, 1. I wrongly given 2, 2. So when you run this line, is that exactly working how I'm expecting, right? Same thing here. Rows means how many sets of data, 4 sets of data, and columns means how many parameters. This should match this one. So the same way, 0 0 0 1, 1 0 1 1, 2 0 2 1, 3 0 3 1, and I'm returning the same thing. It is getting the data from here and passing and printing. This is another way of doing the same thing. According to your requirement, you can use this way or that way, the previous way. What is that? This way. Here no need to mention the rows and columns, but there you need to mention which, how many rows and how many columns. Okay, this is all about data provider. We have seen that what is data provider attribute for the @test method, and what is the data provider annotation to supply the data, and data provider in same class. So when you run something like that, it will look into the same class, is there any data provider with the same name available or not. If you provide from another class, you need to mention data provider class, in which class the data provider is available. Okay, this is all about data provider. Okay, that's all in this video. Thank you.